Thanks, everyone. I'm James Tryon, and today we're going to be talking about LearnDash certificates. Oh, my mic. Okay, should be back. Sorry about that. Yeah, as I said, I'm James Tryon. I've been using WordPress since 2007. I'm the lead organizer of WordCamp Orlando this year. I'm the ambassador of Wapoos, which is the mascot of WordPress. It's the little yellow anime-looking creature. I have 3 kids, a fantastic wife, and if I'm not working, I'm usually making stuff. You can find me on Facebook in our group or on Twitter at James Tryon. Today we're going to be talking about LearnDash certificates. I have a lot to cover in this, but I'm probably going to try to get through the slides pretty fast so we can get over and actually play with the demo and go over some different things. So bear with me. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between my slides and some examples and things like that as we go through the next 30 minutes or so. Feel free to ask questions. We're going to have questions at the end. If it's relevant to what we're talking about and Justin or I sees it, and then we can get to it during. If not, we'll get to it at the end for sure. If your question is not answered today, we'll make sure that it's answered in the follow-up in Facebook and posted when the webinar goes up next week. This should be recording, and I want to make sure that it's recording. Yep, we're good. We're recording. Okay. Today, what we're going to be covering is the benefits of certifications, how they work in LearnDash, creating certifications, assigning them, useful tips, and of course, the demo. So the benefits of a certification. I mean, obvious, it's something you can hang on your wall when you're finished. It's a nice feeling of a sense of accomplishment once you've actually finished your course. It's anyone who actually has a certificate or a diploma, it also gives a little bit of pride when you walk past and you see it. So it's a really nice thing to give to your learners as an added value, something for them to strive for as they're working on your course. And let's say this is some type of continuing education, certifications are needed. So doing an online course and getting your certification is something that you have to actually turn in to get credit. So a lot of times this is a very key point or feature that comes along with LearnDash as an LMS, because a lot of times your employees or training associates are going to need this. While I was in college, we used to have to do like 4 hours a month and a week of training a year. In the job that we were in, and we had to bring in the certifications to our managers. So you can use certifications along with shortcodes to talk about your passing score or the point value you earned and all that, and we'll talk about that later. But the benefits of certifications, besides the obvious of having a tangible thing and being proud of what you've actually accomplished, it's something you can hang on your wall and all of the added benefits. So as we go forward and we're actually start designing and talking about your certification you're building, something you want to think about is you want to plan out what you're creating first. If you were just to jump into the certification builder and try to start building something, it can be very daunting. You want to know what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what elements that you actually want to add and include into your cert. So think about that. Spend a little time planning. We're going to go over some resources where you can find some free or inexpensive certification backgrounds where you can get inspiration or buy them for your learners. Some things to keep in mind when you're actually purchasing or creating any type of assets for your certification. A certification is really a PDF. Granted, most of your learners are looking at them on the screen, but a large portion of them will probably print them out and turn them in, or even hang them on their wall. So you want to keep those things in mind when you're creating or building. a couple key things to keep in mind, we'll talk about this later too, is full color versus edge bleed, and if they're going to be printed. You want to keep room for margins where the frame might be if they actually are printing out a certification. So think about that. The quality of the background image or any signatures or any symbols or seals that you're adding, they all need to be 300 DPI. LearnDash supports 8.5 by 11, which is at a pixel ratio is 2,550 by 3,300 if you're going for 300 DPI. And then that's the opposite for 11 by 8.5. Now, 8.5 by 11 is a typical US sheet of mail. An A4 is just a fraction bigger. I believe an A4 is like 11 and a quarter and 8.5, something like that. LearnDash does support both those sizes, and we'll go over those in the settings in a little bit. But depending on your size, your paper, we support both of those. You just want to make sure your print resolution when you're actually setting up and looking for your images. So there's a lot of resources out there, but when it comes to creating certifications and really any type of generic resources or assets for a quick project, these are the order that I would probably go. Certification, definitely Canva. Now, Canva is a great resource. It comes with a free level, paid level. If you're paid, you can get more services. You can save your brand colors and your fonts. You can reuse things quicker. It's a great service for creating social media posts on the fly. But when it comes to creating other resources for my clients, when I'm creating actual projects, Creative Market, Graphic River, Adobe Stock, those are great resources for buying them. They're sellable for free, but for the purpose of creating a actual background or vector or stock something that's not a photo, I like Creative Market or maybe Graphic River for this type of thing. Now, while we're here, I want to go ahead and take a look at some certs from these sources. Let me go ahead and bring this over here. So you can check out some of these certifications from Canva. Now, granted, I'm on a large screen, and I can zoom in on this a little bit. These are not all free. Some of these are a couple dollars. You have to pay for the assets of the stock images. But you can come in here, search certification from Canva, and go crazy. You start, at least from an inspiration. You can come in here and see how what some modern trends are, what other certifications might look like. Most of these are free or a couple dollars, and when you're buying them, you're buying the stock assets that come along with them or access to the fonts. This is one from Graphic River. It's $5 to use for one, and I believe the extended license is $75. So if you were going to buy this, give it to all your students, $5 to $75. You're going to have a nice professional looking certification. And all this is layered and elements that you can pull these things out. And then a couple really cool ones. Now, you guys might see that my browser is sleeping. It's a plugin I'm using to turn off most of my tabs when I'm not using them. So I have to reload when I go there. But these are some different examples of vertical and horizontal. And you can design most of these yourself. Like this is a $9 or a $12 certification for commercial use. These are pretty simple, but they look really nice. They take care of the purpose. They're different than your typical looking diploma. There's a couple in here that I thought looked pretty cool. Like this is a very simple one. We'll probably try to mimic something like this later on. I got a couple more I want to show quickly. Yeah, I thought this was really cool. Like, you can see the impact of this image. It's very little content actually in the certification, but it has a very impactful header image. The rest of it's really simple, has a little ribbon. You put your company logo on there, their name, what it's for. You don't have to do a lot of design work, and it really is that large, impactful header that sells this certification. Now, this one's only $9, but make a couple of to make a geometric pattern like this in this type of certification, I thought was really nice. So let's get back to the actual presentation, but you can see, look at one more. There's all types of like fun, cheap certifications that you can use and copy. So getting back to the actual presentation, again, I recommend these fantastic resources. So this should have said, how do they work? I'm sorry about that, we'll fix that. But okay, so the certifications, this is how they work. You have, this sort of looks like how you would think the older WordPress used to look before Gutenberg. You have your basic WYSIWYG editor, you have your featured image, you have your title content at the top. Your featured image is your background image. This whole element, when you save, will generate and create a PDF once you've assigned them to a course or a quiz or our group. So you would create your code and your actual content in the body, and that's going to overlay on your background image. And we'll go into this a little bit more later. You don't have to know most of this. The system, the tools in place will help you, but we'll go over a lot of what's here momentarily. So the featured image, earlier, as I said, this is from Canva. This is the original, and I really like this as a starting point. Some things to keep in mind, and we'll talk about this as we go, is your certifications are, you can set them up to be broad or very specific, meaning you can create one per quiz or course or group, or you can create one that's used across everything. That's up to you and how elaborate you want to go with your certifications. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. If this is a broad certification, meaning the title, the title, the course, point values, things like that are going to be in the same place but different per course or quiz, then you want to think about how they're actually lining up and how long they are and how they rotate and they'll wrap. So all that can be dangerous if you're adding too much to one place. So try not to overcomplicate it. Try to give everything its own line, just for breathing room and to make sure that things will always work and stay consistent. Same thing with someone's name. It could be a very long name. So if you make someone's name too long, too big, and then the font wraps because it's long, it's a very long name, that's also going to get in the way. It's going to create some line heights and some issues. We'll go into line heights and different options you can use later, but I would be careful with line heights in large fonts. And when you're using line heights to control space, that also means every time there's a wrap, there's going to be that much line height per wrap. So you might want to use a hidden paragraph tag or some other tool or some other element to give you that space instead of always adding that line height directly to the title. And again, we'll do that in a demo later and go over that in a little bit more detail. But this is the starting Canva image, and Canva lets you delete all this stuff. So once you delete it, you have this image. And if I bought this, the watermarks would go away, obviously on the flowers, but this is for demonstration purposes, and it lets me download a comp. So now that I know what I want it to look like, I've turned that off and I've added the background image. Now it's time to set our custom shortcodes and content added to the actual cert. So the nice thing is LearnDash comes with a built-in shortcode tool to inject those in for you. It also supports your custom shortcodes. So if you have shortcodes throughout your WordPress site, they'll also work. If you want to use the post meta shortcodes or any user meta, they'll also work. Now, the things that you want to keep in mind is they will not always work if those assets aren't assigned, or if you're assigning something that requires a lesson but you're showing it on a page, it doesn't mean that they'll always render. So you want to be careful what shortcode you're using and then where they're going to be rendered out or how they're going to be used in order to get all the data. Another better example is if you're using shortcodes for a group, but you have assigned this certification to a course that's not in a group, those group shortcodes will not be shown. And again, we'll have demos on that momentarily. Here's an example of using the shortcode tool to add all the shortcodes in for the user information, the quiz information, course information, and there's even groups, but I didn't have enough room on the screen. This is our tool. So if you see the top of my screen where it says close tag and it says LD, now if you're in the visual view, this will look a little different. I'm in the code view of the WYSIWYG editor, and you can see that if I click this LD button, I'm going to get our LearnDash shortcode pop-up. Now you have course information, group, quiz, and user meta. This drop-down has all of the available shortcodes in it. So all you have to do is pick the information you're looking for, pick the shortcode that you want, click insert, and it adds it to the page. Now you can see all the options for courses, for groups, for quizzes, and user meta. This is the custom fields too. There's a settings in your courses to turn on custom fields. If you have the custom fields turned on, then the custom fields will work, and all you need is the custom field ID in your set. Same thing with user information. If the user information is not set in the user profile, it will not show up in the certificate. So if there is a key feature of their portfolio, of their profile that needs to be on the certificate, I would encourage them to fill that out somehow. That would be a good use case of gamification to encourage profile completion, but that's another topic. But all these fields are pulled directly from their profile. And we talked about not all shortcodes will work in all cases. Your lesson shortcodes will not necessarily work on a quiz shortcode. A group shortcodes will not necessarily work on a quiz or a lesson shortcode if they're not part of a group. So just keep that in mind. There's a couple ways to modify and handle CSS with the certifications. There's the current inline style in which we were talking about. There is some limitations there, and we'll cover that next. There's the CSS block, which is a new feature that in LearnDash 3.2. In the course settings area, we added a new block that lets you add CSS that it's attached only to the PDF, that lets you render render your actual elements a little easier without filling all of your content with CSS. Now, inline CSS is still currently needed, but you can remove some of that bloat by leveraging our new CSS block. And we have a new filter also in 3.0 that helps you control the margins that are being set on your actual PDF, and we'll go over all three of those next. A lot of the inline styles are not going to work. A lot of those are stripped out. How a PDF renders CSS is much different than how a browser would render CSS, even though they're the same, but a PDF is being generated at a higher resolution and is designed to be printed. So when you're using a CSS that's primarily used for a monitor or a screen, they don't always render, and therefore a lot of them don't transfer over. So things like margins, absolute positionings, paddings, z-indexes, some of those things just will not work in the certification builder right now. The elements on the screen are the ones that do work. And you can also get fancy and do a little bit more unique things. We'll go over that momentarily, but right now you have line height, which you can use for spacing and use to control the actual line height of paragraph text. You have text align, which lets you say left, right, justified, center. Text indent is sort of like the cert we showed earlier, that everything is left aligned, but over 400 pixels or over 40%. So you can do text indent, you can indent one line, the whole section, single elements. You have font size, lets you set the font size of, of whatever. Font family, you can come in and actually set the fonts. I would recommend to try to stick to system fonts here, but there is other fonts that you can use. It's just the system fonts are going to be a little safer and always render a little cleaner when you're trying to be precise. You have the color option, hexadecimal and RGB will work here. Font weights, text transformations. Font weights are like light, bold, and font transformations are uppercase, capitalized, lowercase, and text styles are italic, bold, things like that. So as I was saying earlier, the line height. I was playing with some certification designs, and with long names, they wrap. And if you're bumping a name down because you want it to be positioned lower on the page, and you're setting the, let's say you're setting the line height to 150, well, now this long name just wrapped, and now your name is taking up 300 pixels, no longer 150 pixels. There's another problem, is if you put an empty element on a page, WordPress in the WYSIWYG editor is going to want to clean up your code. It's going to say, oh, you have an empty paragraph tag. You don't need that. So if you're switching between visual view and text view, it's going to try to clean up your empty tags. So you need something that's going to hold it. Non-breaking spaces used to work, but even those are stripped out at points. So you can put in a transparent 1 pixel image, or I wrote hidden and I made the font size 0. Now, hidden with font size 0 isn't necessarily the best, and you have to have a trade-off on design versus accessibility, and I hate to say that, but you are creating a PDF that's meant to be printed. So a screen reader would still see the word hidden, so maybe the transparent image with an alt tag of spacer might be best, but still, this will work, and it would allow the rest of the text to be readable, and it's not going to throw your certificate all wonky if someone has a really long name. So I would recommend to put in an extra element that doesn't have the key elements in it and use that to set your height. This is the CSS block I was telling you earlier about. This is a newer feature in LearnDash 3.2. It's underneath the settings section for all certificates, and you can add any custom CSS here that's going to be printed out on your actual PDF. This is a new feature in 3.2 as well, that at least exposing it, that allows you to set the margins of the parameter of the certification. So if you've ever added, the first line to your cert, and you're like, well, that seems a little high. How do I get it to go a little higher up on the page? Well, you could use this filter and modify those margins. You do want to be careful of bleeds, where the printer would print off if it was really printed out and all of that. So be careful with this, but you can control the actual container margins a little more. Here's a couple of third-party plugins that I wanted to showcase. Our Facebook group has a very large community. And a lot of the users in there also have plugins. So I would always recommend to see how you can possibly extend your LearnDash course by looking at our other users' plugins. So a couple of them that might come in handy when dealing with certificates. Uncanny Owl has a couple. One that lets you, a widget that lets you display all of your certs in your own profile, so you can add that widget wherever, and those are for a logged in user to see their certifications. So it's not something you would show to the rest of the world. It's literally for me to see my certs. They also have one that lets you send any completed certification by email. So as it's completed, it's going to email the user their finished cert. Don't know the price on that. I haven't used them, but Uncanny Owl stuff usually pretty awesome. And then e-learning complete has a QR code and unique tracking generator. That's pretty cool. So if you want to track, like, so if you want to make sure that your employees or students aren't sharing completed certs, changing name, printing them out, turning them in, you can use something like this. There's a couple versions, but theirs is pretty cool because it ties into a possible QR code. So you could generate the unique code every time the certification is made. You can scan the QR code, then it says that the last time it scans when it lets you know when the cert was made and whose email it was who took the cert. Again, those are third-party plugins, not related to us. We get no kickback, no affiliate. Just wanted to point them out there and check out some all the other third-party options that extend LearnDash. Here's an example of the QR code with a unique certification number. Okay, so let's go over some certification stuff. Let me close this. Make my screen a little bigger. So a couple things we want to do to start. When making a certification, there's not an easy way to view it without actually tying it to something. So what I like to do is go ahead and make my test cert. So what I did is I'll open this up just so everyone can see it. This is my test certification. And when I was saying earlier, visual view and test view, these are the two. These are the difference. And this is the actual code. And if you put in any non-breaking spaces, and I'll just show you. If I put in a paragraph tag here for spacing purposes, and I went visual in text, you can see that it'll strip it out. So be careful if you put a lot of work into something and you switch views, it'll strip it out. So be careful there. But you can see that I use the LearnDash shortcode builder to go through here and pick my parameters. The one that I didn't show an option for is time. Time lets you go into a little bit more detail and actually set the PHP format of that. So, okay, well, how do we actually view this certification? This is just a blank one for testing. So I like to make a simple quiz. So I'm going to go over here to quizzes. And the fun thing is this quiz doesn't need to be assigned to a lesson, a course, or anything. It can just be for testing. So I created a quiz. It literally is just one question for testing. If we go to questions, you can see it's just one question. And the cool thing is I don't have to actually put this anywhere. So if I hit view, I'm going to view my quiz, hit start quiz. It's going to generate my certificate for me. I can now print my certificate. And you can see these are all the shortcodes that are possible with any certificate. Now, you can know that it's only showing things that were on the quiz because I assigned it to a quiz. I didn't necessarily assign this to the course information or the group information. I also have my user information. I don't have a description set for my user, so nothing is here. And I also didn't set anything for the custom fields on the quiz, so nothing is there. So this is a good way of just getting used to what the shortcodes do, what they mean, and how they render out. And I'm more than happy to copy this so you don't have to copy and paste and recreate this if someone wants to use this as a test, as an actual test certificate. And then you can see that it says it needs these. So what I'm saying is user field login user is going to generate this. The shortcode is actually right here, but I took the brackets off. I tried rendering it in the code so it would show it, like using the code bracket, but the certificate kept pulling that out. So the cool thing is, now that we actually have this the certificate here, I'm just going to make a quick edit. I said change it to testing just for the purposes of showing what I'm doing. Now if I come over here, and now I have already assigned it to the quiz. I've already taken the quiz. Now I'm going to come back over to the cert, and I'm going to hit refresh. On refresh, it changes. So you can see now it says testing here. I don't have to retake the quiz to regenerate the certification. I can leave this window open. I can just keep going until my certification is designed the way that I want it. So we understand how we can test now. We don't need to worry with this. Go back. Okay. So how do we assign a quiz to something? Now that we, I'm going to go back to make a more detailed quiz, and we'll spend the last 10-15 minutes making a nicer looking certificate. But I want to show how we actually assign a certificate to something before we go there. Oh, actually, let's look at this too. The settings tab for all quizzes is where the new I thought it was here. It's a new feature. I forgot where it lives. It's in one of these settings, but as far as actually assigning the quiz goes, I want to stay on topic. So as far as quizzes, oh, I know, silly me. I'm looking in the quizzes, and what I was trying to do is in the certifications. That's why it wasn't there. So if I'm looking at the actual quiz, when I click edit, and I can go over here to settings, and you can assign a quiz here. So in the second section, it says quiz a certificate. I can pick which one that I want to assign to this course, and the number or score they need in order to pass, in order to get the certificate. So someone has to pass with at least 80% in order to earn the certificate that you would assign to it. So this is the same settings. So settings has it. So each quiz has their own. Same thing with groups. This is our group from the last webinar. Look at settings. You can assign the group certificate here. Actually, I want to change this group certificate to testing certificate. Hit update. And now I'm going to go to the front end of the site, and I'm going to look at my actual course, my group. So I'm going to go to my account. I have my courses here. What I'm trying to do is I want to go to the group page. I think I'm missing the group shortcode. So I'm going to scroll in here and go to the group shortcode here. Yeah, this is what I wanted. And since I've already completed this group, I want to say download the certificate. And now we can see that the group info was filled out, because the same test certificate that I added to the quiz, I've now added to the course. Now, I didn't take a quiz. I just assigned this to a course, so the quiz information is not assigned. But you can see all the information assigned to the actual course, to the group, is now here visible on the actual test course. Okay, so the last thing I want to look at is assigning. We've assigned it to a quiz. We've assigned it to a group. Now let's go assign a course to a lesson. unless I'm over speaking. I know you can assign it to a group. No, you can't assign it to a lesson. You can assign it to a quiz, and you can assign it to a course, the whole course, and you can assign it to the group. Those are the three things that you can assign an actual certificate to. So the last thing that I want to show before we go back and start working on the fancier certificate is the actual new settings. So let's go look at the certificate that I was trying to show earlier, but I got confused because I was on the quizzes. It's here. Is now we have the ability to add custom CSS to our PDFs only, and this was released in the 3.2 version, and we also have the ability to use the custom fields by checking this box. Okay, so let's go look at our other certificate. I wanted to work on a fancier certificate. I wanted it to be over to the left a little, but centered. We'll reload this. This is the certificate that I was working on. One thing to keep in mind, if you wanted to go really fancy with something, or you could do that or add that to the background image before you set it up. So you could then, let's say you wanted a place where you wanted the signature and you wanted to actually print these out and sign them. You can add a signature box and don't add a signature. Or you can actually add your signature with an image, and it would also be rendered out here. If you needed to add some logos, or if you wanted to fill this bottom right corner with logos or certification information, you can make that part of the background. So if there's things that are fancier or don't have to be read by a screen reader, you can add them as part of the image, and then use the shortcodes, line heights, line heights and text indents to produce your actual certificate. So let's go ahead and modify this a little bit. Actually, let's do this. My screen's big enough. We're going to pull this certificate over here. And I'll zoom in a little on this. A couple things that I want to show before we dive too much into the actual content is this is the featured image we talked about before. This is the letter size, A4 or letter. The A4 is going to be a fraction of an inch bigger, but and then you have orientation, landscape or portrait of your actual certificate if you want it to be more up and down or left and right. You can use any of the actual elements that you see here up top. So if you wanted to add anything in, let's add a quick image in. Maybe we won't do that right now because because the shortcodes are so big, it's hard to see. So let's go over a little bit of the CSS. So let's break this down a little chunk by chunk. I have the H1 here. This is a certificate of achievement. This is the pink up here. I have it set to text indent to 270. So that means by default, all these elements are spanning 100%. They're going edge to edge of the PDF. I'm telling them I want everything to start at 270 pixels. Because of the way that the certification builder works, you have to set this per element, but you can see all the way down, all my P tags, all my H2 tags, all my span tags, they're all set to 270. So I'm indenting them over. I'm telling it I want the color to be pink. Now, if I wanted this to be a hex color, I can do a hex color. I can say like, I want it to be a light gray. So I can make it all E's, hit update, hit refresh. It's a little bit grayer. I want it to be, blue. I can tell it to be blue. There's some colors in CSS that work. In some colors, you have to be more precise and actually go hex or RGB. If I refresh, it'll be blue. Let's go back to pink. Now, we are very limited here. As I said earlier, you're really only limited to the basic stuff with fonts. You don't get margins, you don't get z indexes, you don't get widths and things like that. So you're going to have to stick to text indents, to font widths, to colors, using your line heights. So you can see that I've used the hidden line height of 90 to create this gap here. And I've used another one down here of a line height of 150 to create the gap here. My name is being generated through the shortcodes. So you can see my first name, my last name. Now this would be the person of the cert. Obviously, I'm the one that took it, so it's rendering. It's not the person that could be logged in. Now it could also be the person that's logged in. Then you could generate these on the fly because it is user meta. So need to be careful with that and check your certs to make sure that they all look right before you send them out. You can also see that I have my score here, but I didn't have a score associated with this quiz, so it didn't work. And then I have the actual quiz name here. So as we were saying earlier, your quiz name could be anything. And I have a course for testing certificates, and if it was really long, they could wrap. So you want to be careful with that. Now, just to prove up my point, let's say this here, this certificate of achievement, we wanted that to be a line height of 90 because we wanted it to be lower. I just want you to see what happens. We're going to do that, and we're also going to make this font just a little bigger. We're going to make it 120. This should cause the font to wrap. When the font wraps, you can see what happened. And that's because the font wrapped. So let's make this font 30 before we put it back to 80. And this is just so you can see what I'm doing. It should show up now. You can see it down here. See, it's bumped it all the way to there. So that we don't want that. So let's change this. Let's change this back to 80. And I want to say line height back. I want this to be, just to prove a point, this is still an issue. I want to put a BR here. A BR is a break without breaking an actual return. So instead of going to a new paragraph, but you want something on a new line, you would use a break. So I'm going to do 2 breaks here. And all I'm doing is this is to get these on their own line to show what line height will do and why it's best to use it as a hidden, see the line height. So if we were to take this same setup but leave the line height off and leave the line height as part of the hidden spacer underneath it, then it's a much more usable experience. So if you're fighting with something and you can't figure out what's going on and your certification's running on multiple pages, it's probably the line height, and I would move it to something like this. And one last little thing, I want to copy this just to show you what happens. Again, even though there's styles on that hidden, on the that paragraph, if I switch to visual view and go back to text view, it's going to wipe that out. So you want to be careful of that. So that's creating a certificate in a nutshell. We're right about time. We got about 10 minutes of time for questions.
Yeah, thanks, James, for going through that. We have a few questions here. I'll read through some of them. One of them coming in from Fernando is that LearnDash Academy free? How can I get access? We bought LearnDash license. If you're referring to the demo site, yes, that whole site is free. If you log into your account, there is a link to it and how you can install. So you can have a look there. But on to questions about the certificate. So text, let's see, Jose asked, text transform uppercase, can use it in user meta field. So I guess wondering if the text can be made all capital letters.
Yeah, it should, because soon as, okay, so it's a two-step process. The user meta is going to get the data, and then and then you're going to have all your data, and all that data is going to be then rendered and turned into a PDF. So yes, it would totally work. So yeah, LearnDash is actually taking all your content and it's saving it as like a post type that's hidden, and then once that's like made, it then generates the PDF. So that generated PDF is then rendered based off the CSS that's applied on top of the compiled user meta. So yes.
All right, perfect. Sorry, I was on mute there.
That's okay.
Let's see. So I'm gonna go through some of these questions here. Somebody said, check out Crello. They have super certificate backgrounds. It's a CRELLO. Janet, thank you for sharing that tip for finding backgrounds. Yeah, so maybe James, you can go there real quick.
Oh, it sort of looks like another version of Canva. Yeah, I'd definitely check this out. Man, shiny tools are such an addiction of mine. Like,
yeah,
it'd be fun to play with this. Yeah, thanks for the resource.
And also, folks were wondering about some of the items we were covering in their certificates. Yes, they are new as of 3.2. I think that the CSS, for example, field, little things that James pointed out with some extra customization for like the margins, for example.
Yeah,
that was new as well. And I will say this: the one thing that's, if you're intimidated by the certificates, obviously our support is able to help. James is going to post his example content so you can create your certificate and get the spacing kind of right off the bat. Something that's just something to keep in mind too is once you create your certificate, you're pretty much done. It's kind of a one and done deal. At least that's what we've seen from most people. They create it, they get it the way they want, they spend a little time on it, and then they move on. And it's not one of those tasks in LearnDash where you're revisiting often, if at all. So just you may it may seem intimidating. Where there's resources here to help folks. Obviously, in the Facebook group are helpful. We can help as well in our support. Our support has been known to jump in and just fix the spacing for folks if they are having a little difficulty with it. But once you do it, you're kind of done, and you can move on. And really, the biggest impact that you can have is getting a custom image, getting a custom background, like James has been pointing out with the Canva. I think it was the first tool, and Crello, so the one that Janet shared. So thank you.
Yeah, and I by no means do I want it to sound negative towards our certificate. It was just a lot to take in, and I wanted to like highlight the shortcomings so you don't get frustrated. If you know what you're trying to do and you design it in a fashion that you know what you're trying to accomplish, it really isn't that difficult. You have a little bit of spacing. You can make the text bigger or smaller. I'm more than happy to help. We'll post all these resources. We have my video that will be posted. We have the older video from Joe. We have a couple other, documentation resources that are great that outline all the features that are there. Definitely more than happy to help you. And the beauty of this versus normal web is your certification's not going to change width. You don't have to worry about it being responsive because it's meant to be printed. It's meant to be 8.5 by 11. So you can have a little bit more fun and getting very precise with your layouts.
Exactly. And all right, so we have two more questions here. I think we have time for two more anyhow. Johan is wondering, is there a possibility to use a birth date, maybe from an extra field from a WooCommerce checkout?
There is. Yeah, well, you're going to have to make sure that content exists. So however you create that custom meta, it can be part of Woo, it can be custom shortcode, it can be custom meta, key value, however you want to create that the WordPress way, and it's in the system, it'll work. You just have to have if that shortcode works anywhere else in your WordPress environment, it should work in this certificate. And if it's user meta tied to them, done the proper way through the standard API way of WordPress user meta, it'll work no problem. That's the
Okay, yeah.
custom key too. That's
Mhm.
this. I apologize. The last thing I'll say. So if there's user meta, it'll work right away. But you can also use this custom field ID depending on which one that you're on, and you can pull that data in. So
Yeah,
yeah, it'll
exactly.
that's what it's for.
Yeah, and user meta, for those of you maybe not entirely sure what that means, pretty much anything in the WordPress profile. So like when there's a field in the WordPress profile for that user and there's some information in there, you can pull that out, put it onto a certificate. Some plugins add fields to that profile, and then you could leverage that using that user meta field shortcode for the certificate. So and then I guess here, final question from Mark. We want a certificate for a user for simply signing up and getting into a membership. What is the best practice for this? Well, okay. So the way that the certificates work in LearnDash, that's maybe a little outside of the standard procedure. One could be for, let's say you have a membership, they sign up, and then you have like a course or something like that that you require them to take. Maybe it's just a simple like introductory course with one lesson that just says welcome. They complete it, and then you give them a certificate for completing that welcome message. That would be, I mean, that's just off the top of my head right now, thinking about it for 5 seconds. But it's yeah, I don't know, James, do you have any ideas there how to maybe give someone a certificate they sign up for a course?
Yeah, so there's 3 ways that you can assign a certificate right now. It's to a group, to a quiz, or to a course. If you wanted to assign it to a membership, then I would say you should use our new groups feature. That really is a membership plugin. That's amazing. But the problem is you're not going to get that certificate until you complete all the courses assigned to that level. So what you said, Justin, is like make a simple intro course, like welcome to the membership. Can we help you with anything? Or how'd you find us? Like you can even use it with an open essay question that says, feedback. You can use it, or you can have a simple question like I was using for testing, just a 1-question thing, and then you can generate this certification. So
Yeah, I like that
unfortunately,
idea.
yeah.
I like that idea with the open-ended question. You could even have a lesson, a quiz on that course, like a intro, go through here first. You kind of give them the lay of the land, what to expect, and then it's an essay question. All it is like, what do you hope to get out of this membership platform? And they, there's no right or wrong answer. They just put it in, they finish it. Oh, that's my cat yelling. They finish it, and then they're good. They get the certificate.
Yeah. And then you get extra feedback too. So it's a bonus.
Okay, well, I think that is all we have time for, and we're at the top of the hour. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, taking time out of your day wherever you are in the world. This is being recorded, so we will be posting this to our YouTube channel, assuming that everything renders correctly. So thank you so much again, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.